Clara Whitmore felt the cold silver ring slide onto her finger, and in that same breath, her new husband leaned down and whispered, so only she could hear, "I'll divorce you tomorrow." She did not flinch. She did not weep. She tilted her chin up, smiled for the crowd, and squeezed his hand so hard, her own nails drew blood from her palm. If you love a story where a quiet woman refuses to break under a man's cruelty, please subscribe to this channel. Stay with me to the very last word and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from tonight, so I can see just how far Clara's story has traveled. The silver ring felt colder than it ought to have. Clara Whitmore kept her eyes on the pastor, not on the man beside her, while the old preacher cleared his throat and declared the two of them husband and wife before God and the Commonwealth of Virginia. "You may now," the pastor began. "No." The word fell between them like a dropped glass. Edward Blackthorne, master of Blackthorne Hall, known up and down the James River as the Duke of Blackthorne, for the cold manor he carried and the 3,000 acres he owned, did not kiss his bride. He leaned down instead. He put his mouth close to her ear. He spoke so soft only she could hear. "I'll divorce you tomorrow." Clara did not move. She felt his breath on her neck, and she did not move. She felt every eye in the chapel pressing on her back, and she did not move. She only tightened her gloved hand around his and held on. "Did you hear me, Miss Whitmore?" he murmured. "Mrs. Blackthorne," she said, just as soft. His jaw set. Not for long. The pastor coughed. A woman in the pews. Edward's Aunt Clara thought, though she had not been properly introduced, gave a small confused laugh, the way folks laugh when they have been waiting too long for a joke and decide to make one for themselves. "Mr. Blackthorne," the pastor tried again. "Perhaps the kiss." "There'll be no kiss." Edward straightened. He let go of Clara's hand as if it had burned him. He turned on his heel and walked down the aisle without looking back, his boots striking the floorboards hard enough to be heard through the open door. Clara stood alone at the altar. For a long moment, she did not know what to do with her hands. They had been holding his. Now they held nothing but a bouquet of white magnolia and a ring that was already too heavy. "Ma'am," the pastor said gently. "Ma'am, you oughta—" "I know." Her voice did not shake. "I know, Reverend. Thank you." She walked down the aisle after her husband, alone. Clara Whitmore had dressed for her wedding at 5 that morning. Her mother had been dead 2 years. Her sister had been gone 6 days. There was no one to help her with the buttons at the back of the gown, so she had done them herself, whispering the numbers under her breath to keep her hands from shaking. When she came down the stairs, her father had looked at her once and looked away. "It'll do," Henry Whitmore had said. "Thank you, Papa." "Don't thank me." I wasn't. He had not heard her. He had not heard anything she'd said in 3 days. Not since he'd come into her room at midnight with Victoria's ivory comb still in his shirt pocket, and told her that she was going to stand at the altar of Blackthorne Chapel on Saturday morning in her sister's place. And she was going to do it quiet, and she was going to do it right, because Edward Blackthorne did not know Victoria had run off with a flower merchant from Boston, and by God, he was not going to know until after the papers were signed. "Papa," Clara had said that night, "he'll see. He'll see at once. He hasn't seen her in 6 years. 6 years is not so long that a man forgets a face. 6 years, Henry had said, is long enough that a man forgets what he was promised and takes what he is given. Hush now." And Clara, who had not cried when her mother died, and had not cried when Victoria rode off in the middle of the night, had not cried then either. She had only said, "Yes, Papa," because what else was there to say? The wedding breakfast was held at Blackthorne Hall. 200 souls had been invited. Most of them had come, and every last one of them had seen their host turn from his bride at the altar. Clara sat at the long table beside her husband, and Edward did not speak to her. He spoke to the men on his other side. He spoke to the aunt who had laughed in the chapel. He spoke to a planter from Petersburg who had ridden in to drink his wine. He spoke to every soul in the room but the woman he had married. "Mrs. Blackthorne, is it?" said a stout woman across the table, her voice pitched loud enough to travel. "Forgive me, dear, but I was told Mr. Blackthorne was to marry the elder Miss Whitmore." Clara lifted her eyes from her plate. "He married the Miss Whitmore who was here, ma'am." A small, dangerous silence. The stout woman blinked. "Well, yes, I suppose he did at that. My sister sends her regrets." "Does she?" "She does." Edward had stopped speaking to the man on his right. Clara felt him listening now, the way you feel a horse listening behind a fence. "Mrs. Blackthorne," the stout woman said carefully. "Where is your sister exactly?" "Boston, last I heard." "Boston?" "Yes, ma'am. With whom, if I may ask?" "You may ask. I haven't got an answer worth giving." The stout woman gave a small, sharp laugh and lifted her glass. "Oh, Mr. Blackthorne," she called down the table. "You've married yourself a witty one." "I've married myself a wrong one," Edward said. Not loud, but loud enough. The table went still. Clara set her fork down on her plate, careful so it would not clink. "Mr. Blackthorne," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Your guests are listening." "I know they are. Then perhaps—" "I'll divorce you tomorrow," Edward said to the table, to the whole bright room, to every one of the 200 souls eating his food. "I thought it best you all know at once. Save the trouble of rumors." A fork clattered onto porcelain somewhere down the table. Nobody bent to pick it up. Clara felt her own heart do something odd. Not break, not shatter. Just stop the way a clock stops and then start again a beat later, slower than it had been. "I see," she said. "Do you?" "Yes, sir. I see quite well." "And you've nothing to say to that?" She looked at him then for the first time since he'd spoken his vow. Full in the face, the hard, clean line of his jaw, the gray eyes that held her the way a sheriff holds a thief, the mouth that had already told her twice in one morning that she was not his wife. "I'll say it tomorrow, Mr. Blackthorne. Beg pardon. Whatever I've got to say, I'll say it tomorrow, when you send the papers." And Clara picked up her fork and ate the rest of her plate of ham and stewed apples, while the guests watched her in a silence so thick you could have cut it with a butter knife. Edward watched her too. He watched her the whole time. He did not touch his plate. The guests did not stay long after that. Edward left first, walking out of his own dining room without a word to any soul who had come to see him wed, and the 200 people he had fed did not rightly know whether to finish their plates or set them aside and run. Most of them set them aside. Clara stayed at the table until the last of them had shuffled past her with their muttered congratulations that were not congratulations, and their sideways looks and their handkerchiefs pressed to their mouths so as not to laugh too loud. "Ma'am," said a voice at her shoulder. Clara turned. The woman who stood there was near 50, thin gray at the temples, with the kind of face that had been watching other people's lives for a long time. She wore a plain black dress and a ring of keys at her belt. "Mrs. Harlan," Clara said. "The housekeeper." "Yes, ma'am, you remembered. You told me your name this morning. I try to remember the names of folks who speak kind to me." Mrs. Harlan's face did not move, but something in her eyes did. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "the master has asked that you be shown to the West Rooms." "The West Rooms?" "Yes, ma'am." "Not the mistress's chambers?" "No, ma'am." "I see. Ma'am, it's all right, Mrs. Harlan." "It ain't." The word came out before the housekeeper could stop it. She pressed her lips together hard the way a woman does when she has caught herself saying a true thing in front of the wrong door. Clara almost smiled. "No, ma'am, it ain't. But that isn't your doing." "No, ma'am." "Show me then." "Yes, ma'am." They walked out of the dining room together. At the top of the narrow servants' staircase, Mrs. Harlan stopped with one hand on the rail. "Ma'am," she said, not looking at her, "I've been in this house 31 years. I served his mother and his grandmother before that, and I reckon I'll serve his children if the good Lord sees fit to give him any." "Yes, ma'am. In all those years I never heard a Blackthorne speak to a bride the way he spoke to you downstairs." "No, ma'am." I just thought you ought to know that. Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. He's a hard man, ma'am. But he ain't a cruel man, not by nature. Something set him off. I know what set him off, Mrs. Harlan. The housekeeper looked at her then properly. Do you, ma'am? I do. Is it what they're saying downstairs? What are they saying? That you ain't the sister he was promised. Then they're saying the truth. Mrs. Harlan let out a slow breath. Ma'am, she said, forgive me, but why did you come? Clara Whitmore looked at her new housekeeper. She looked at the keys at her belt and the gray at her temples, and the 31 years of watching that sat in the lines of her face. Because nobody asked me not to, Clara said. The west rooms were cold. Clara sat on the edge of the bed in her wedding gown and did not unpin her hair. She had not cried in the chapel. She had not cried at the table. She would not cry here. She counted instead. She counted the panes of glass in the one tall window. She counted the boards in the wooden floor. She counted the hours between now and whatever the morning would bring, and when she had counted them all, she counted them again. She was halfway through her third counting when the door opened without a knock. Mrs. Blackthorne. Clara rose to her feet, slow, deliberate. Mr. Blackthorne. Edward stood in the doorway. He had taken off his coat and his cravat. A glass of whiskey hung from his hand, and by the look of him, it was not his first. You're still dressed. I am, sir. Why? I wasn't sure if you'd be sending me home tonight or in the morning. I thought it best to be ready. He stepped into the room. He did not close the door. You've got a tongue on you, he said. Yes, sir. I didn't hear it from Victoria the 3 times I met her. No, sir, you wouldn't have. Why not? Because my sister is a quiet girl in front of strangers and a loud one behind their backs. I am the reverse. Meaning I'll say what needs saying to your face, Mr. Blackthorne, and I'll say nothing of you when you're not in the room. He took a slow drink. You know I'll divorce you. You've said so twice today. I mean it. I know you do. Then why aren't you crying? Clara tilted her head 1/4 of an inch. Is that what you came up here for, sir? To see me cry? I came up here, Edward said, and his voice was low and even and very tired. To ask you one question. Ask it. Did you know? Know what, sir? Don't make me say it. I need you to say it, Mr. Blackthorne. I won't answer something you haven't asked. He took another drink. His hand was not quite steady on the glass. Did you know, he said at last, that your father intended to put you in your sister's place before I did? Clara did not look away. Yes. When? 3 nights before the wedding. 3. Yes, sir. And you agreed to it? I didn't agree. I obeyed. Is there a difference? In this house, sir, I reckon you'd know that better than I would. Edward Blackthorne stared at his wife for a long moment. Then he set the whiskey glass down on the little table by the door hard enough that some of it slopped over the rim and ran down the wood. I'll send the papers in the morning. Yes, sir. You'll sign them. Yes, sir. And you'll go back to your father's house, and you'll tell him that the next Whitmore who tries to sell me a daughter had best send me the right one. Clara felt the blood go out of her face. She did not let it show. Mr. Blackthorne? Yes, ma'am. I'll sign whatever papers you put in front of me. Good. But I won't go back to my father's house. He turned at the door. Beg pardon. I said I won't go back. Where Mrs. Blackthorne do you propose to go? I don't rightly know yet, sir. You don't know? No, sir. I've had 3 days to get married and 1 day to get divorced. I haven't had an hour yet to think past that. He looked at her. He looked at her the way a man looks at a horse he has just bought and is beginning to suspect he has misjudged. Then I reckon you'd best start thinking, Edward Blackthorne said. Yes, sir. Good night, Mrs. Blackthorne. Good night, Mr. Blackthorne. He closed the door behind him, and his boots went heavy down the hall, and then she heard a second door shut far away in the east wing of the house. Clara Whitmore stood alone in the cold west room of Blackthorne Hall. She stood in her white wedding gown, with her sister's ring on her finger, and her father's name still on her back, and she did not cry. She walked to the window. She put her hand flat against the glass. She felt how cold the summer night had gone. "Tomorrow," she said, quiet to nobody but the glass. Then she let her hand fall, and she began at last to unpin her hair, one slow pin at a time, the way a woman undresses for a life she has not yet decided to live. The papers came at 7 in the morning. Clara was already dressed not in her wedding gown, but in a plain gray traveling dress she'd laid out the night before when Mrs. Harlan knocked once, and opened the door with an envelope held out before her like it might bite. "Ma'am." "I see them. He had his lawyer ride out last night, ma'am, before dawn." "Before dawn?" "Yes, ma'am." "He meant it then." "I reckon he did, ma'am." Clara took the envelope. She did not open it. She set it on the little table beside the whiskey ring Edward had left behind the night before. "Mrs. Harlan?" "Yes, ma'am." "Where is Mr. Blackthorne this morning?" "In the study, ma'am." "Alone?" "With his lawyer." "Mr. Hollis?" "Yes, ma'am." "Does Mr. Hollis take his coffee black?" Mrs. Harlan blinked. "Ma'am, his coffee, does he take it black or with cream?" "Cream, ma'am, and 2 sugars. He's particular." "Fetch me a tray, please, Mrs. Harlan. Coffee for 2, and whatever Mr. Blackthorne had for breakfast if he ate any of it." "Ma'am, I don't—" "A tray, Mrs. Harlan." The housekeeper stared at her. "Yes, ma'am." Clara picked up the unopened envelope and walked out of the west room without looking back. The study door was shut. Clara did not knock. She pushed the door open with her shoulder because the tray was in her hands, and she walked in like a woman who had been walking into that room every morning for 10 years. "Good morning, Mr. Blackthorne. Mr. Hollis." 2 men looked up at her. Edward was behind his desk in his shirt sleeves, unshaven, a stack of papers in front of him. The lawyer, a small, tidy man with spectacles pushed down his nose, was in the chair opposite, and he came halfway out of it when he saw her. Mrs. Blackthorne." "Sit down, Mr. Hollis. Your coffee will go cold." She set the tray down on the corner of Edward's desk. "What are you doing?" "Serving coffee, Mr. Blackthorne." "I did not ask for coffee." "No, sir. But Mr. Hollis has ridden a long way this morning on your behalf, and it struck me as unkind to leave a guest of this house unserved on account of a private quarrel." The lawyer's mouth opened. It closed. It opened again. "2 sugars, Mr. Hollis." "Yes, yes, ma'am." "There you are." Edward set his pen down very slowly. "Mrs. Blackthorne." "Yes, sir." "You've received the papers." "I have." "Have you read them?" "Not yet, sir." "Why not?" "Because I thought I'd sign them in front of you, sir, so there could be no question." She set the envelope on the desk between them. "A pen, please." "Mrs. Blackthorne." "A pen, Mr. Blackthorne." Edward did not move. The lawyer Hollis cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackthorne, sir. If the lady wishes to, I mean to say, these things are best done quick." "Be quiet, Hollis." "Yes, sir." Edward looked at Clara. Clara looked at Edward. The coffee steamed between them. "Sit down," he said at last. "Sir?" "Sit down, Mrs. Blackthorne. Drink your coffee. We'll speak of the papers in an hour." "I've nothing to say in an hour I can't say now, sir." "Sit down." Clara sat. She picked up the 3rd cup, the one she had poured for herself, and she drank it black, and her hand did not shake. Hollis left at 8. He gathered his papers, took his hat from the rack, bowed at Clara so deep he near cricked his back, and fled. Edward did not speak until the front door closed behind the lawyer. "Mrs. Blackthorne." "Yes, sir." "What was that?" "Coffee, sir." "That was not coffee." "No, sir, it wasn't." "Then what was it?" Clara set down her cup. "Mr. Blackthorne, if you mean to put me out of this house, you will put me out of it. I've said I'll sign whatever papers you hand me, and I will. But I will not sneak out the back door like a girl caught stealing silver. If I leave from the front steps in daylight with the whole county watching." You want the whole county watching. I want the whole county to see a woman walk out of this house on her own 2 feet, sir, not be carried out. Why? Because that's the difference between leaving a marriage and being thrown from one. Edward was quiet a long moment. You did not know my name 3 weeks ago. I knew your name, sir. Everyone in Virginia knows your name. You did not know my face. No, sir, I did not. And yet here you are. Here I am. Drinking my coffee. Drinking your coffee. He laughed. It was a short, hard sound, a laugh that had no humor in it, but it was a laugh, and Clara heard it for what it was, the first crack. She stood. I'll be in the kitchens, Mr. Blackthorne. The kitchens. Yes, sir. Why? Because 200 guests ate in this house yesterday, sir, and I reckon somebody ought to thank the cook. She walked out. Edward Blackthorne sat at his desk with the unopened envelope in front of him, and the smell of his wife's coffee still on the air, and he did not pick up his pen again for near an hour. The cook's name was Mrs. Dutton. She was 63, as broad as she was tall, and she had been cooking in the Blackthorne kitchens since before Edward was born. When Clara walked in, Mrs. Dutton was up to her elbows in flour, and the 3 kitchen girls went still as church mice. "Ma'am," said Mrs. Dutton. Her voice was careful. "Mrs. Dutton." "If you're here about the wedding breakfast, ma'am, I can explain the ham." "I'm here to thank you." Silence. "To ma'am. 200 souls, Mrs. Dutton, in a house that hadn't had a dinner party in 3 years by Mrs. Harlan's reckoning. And every plate came out hot. Well, yes, ma'am. I grew up in a house with 1 cook and no kitchen girls. Mrs. Dutton and I know how long that ham took. I wanted you to hear it said." Mrs. Dutton stared at her. She wiped her floury hands on her apron. She wiped them again. "Ma'am." "That's all, Mrs. Dutton. I won't trouble your morning." "Ma'am, you ain't troubling nothing." "Thank you." "Ma'am." Clara turned to go. "Ma'am." Clara stopped. "The master," said Mrs. Dutton, quiet. "He didn't eat his supper last night." "No." "No, ma'am. I sent up a plate. It came back." "I see." He ain't missed a supper in this house in 4 years, ma'am. Not since his mother passed." Clara stood very still. "Thank you, Mrs. Dutton." "Ma'am." Clara walked out of the kitchen, and the 3 girls started breathing again, and Mrs. Dutton looked at her flour and said to nobody in particular, "Well, I'll be." By noon, every servant in Blackthorne Hall knew the new mistress had thanked the cook. By 1, every servant knew she had signed no papers. By 2, every servant knew that Mr. Blackthorne had not signed his either. Clara did not go back to the west room. She went instead to the mistress's sitting room, the proper one, the one with the good window that looked out over the front drive, and she sat down at the writing desk that had belonged to Edward's mother, and she began to write. She wrote a list of every guest who had come to the wedding. She wrote it from memory because she had stood at the door for an hour and a half shaking hands, and she had made herself remember every name. When she had written 206 names, she stopped. She counted them. She counted them again. She set down her pen. Mrs. Harlan. The housekeeper was in the hall. She had been in the hall, Clara suspected, for some while. Yes, ma'am. The invitation list for the wedding. Yes, ma'am. Who kept it? The master, ma'am, and Mr. Hollis. I would like to see it. A pause. Ma'am, I don't rightly know if... Mrs. Harlan. Yes, ma'am. If I am to be divorced tomorrow, or the day after, it hardly matters what I see today. Does it? No, ma'am. I reckon it don't. Fetch it, please. Yes, ma'am. The list came to her at 3 in the afternoon. Clara sat at the desk with her own list on the left and Edward's list on the right, and she read them against each other name by name. At the 43rd name she stopped. At the 59th she stopped again. At the 112th she set her pen down very carefully and put both her hands flat on the desk. Mrs. Harlan, Ma'am, are you certain this is the list Mr. Blackthorne sent out? That's the master's own hand on the front, ma'am. I see it is. Ma'am, is something wrong with it? Clara did not answer. She was counting. 14 names on Edward's list had not been at the wedding. 14. And 6 names who had been at the wedding were not on Edward's list at all. Mrs. Harlan? Yes, ma'am. Who greeted the guests at the door yesterday? Mr. Hollis, ma'am, and your father. My father? Yes, ma'am. He stood beside Mr. Hollis the whole first hour. Did he now? Yes, ma'am. Clara sat back in her chair. She did not say anything for a long while. Then she said very soft, Mrs. Harlan, would you please send for my father? Ma'am? I would like to see my father. Here, this evening. Ma'am, the master? The master has given me a list of guests, Mrs. Harlan. He has not given me a list of people I may not invite into this house. No, ma'am, I don't reckon he has. Thank you. Ma'am? Mrs. Harlan went. Clara sat alone at the desk of the dead mistress of Blackthorne Hall, and she looked at the 2 lists, and she felt something cold and slow begin to move in her chest. It was not fear. It was the start of understanding. Henry Whitmore came at 6 in the evening. He came in a borrowed carriage because the Whitmore carriage had been sold 2 months back to cover a debt Clara was not supposed to know about. He came without a hat because he had left in a hurry. He came because Mrs. Harlan's note had said only, Sir, Mrs. Blackthorne requests your presence, urgent. And Henry Whitmore, who had not been sent for by a daughter in his life, had come running. Clara met him in the hall. Papa? Clara? Girl. What's happened? Has he put you out? Has he? Come into the drawing room, Papa. Clara. The drawing room. He followed her. She closed the door behind him. She did not sit down, and she did not ask him to sit. Papa, who changed the guest list? Henry Whitmore went still. Beg pardon, girl? 14 names on Mr. Blackthorne's list were not at the wedding. 6 names at the wedding were not on his list. Who changed it? Clara. Papa. How should I know a thing like that? Because Mrs. Harlan saw you stand at the door for the first hour of the reception, beside Mr. Hollis, greeting the guests. I was being civil. You were being careful. Clara. Who was not there, Papa? Who was on Mr. Blackthorne's list but did not come? And who came in their place? Henry Whitmore's face had gone the color of old paper. You don't know what you're asking, child. I'm asking Papa. Clara, listen to me. Was Victoria's name on the list? What? My sister. Was her name on the list of guests? Clara. Was it? No. No. No, child, of course not. She was to be the bride. Then why? Clara said, very quiet. Is there a name on this list in Mr. Blackthorne's own hand that reads Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Calvert of Boston? Her father's mouth opened. It did not close. Mr. Thomas Calvert, Papa, the flower merchant, from Boston. Clara, Mr. Blackthorne invited the man my sister ran off with to his own wedding. Clara, you don't. Mr. Blackthorne invited them both, Papa, by name, Mr. and Mrs. Calvert, which means... She stopped. Her hand found the back of a chair. Which means my sister was already married when she was promised to Mr. Blackthorne. Clara. She was already married, Papa, and you and Mr. Blackthorne both knew it. Henry Whitmore sat down, though she had not offered him a chair. He sat down like a man whose legs had gone out from under him. Papa? Girl? Tell me. It wasn't meant to. It wasn't meant to end like this, Clara. How was it meant to end? He was going to pay the bride price, to me, on account of the engagement, on account of the shame of a broken engagement. Do you understand, girl? It wasn't a wedding, it was a settlement. He was going to pay me, and then he was going to send her home quiet, and nobody was ever going to know Victoria had gone to Boston. A settlement, girl. That was the whole of it. He was never meant to stand up in front of the preacher. He was never meant to marry anybody. The plan was to come to make a show of being jilted to take the money and to go. "Then why," Clara said, "is there a ring on my finger, Papa?" Henry Whitmore did not answer. "Why am I married to him, Papa? Because you came down the stairs, girl. Because you came down the stairs in your sister's gown, and he saw you, and he did not stop the wedding. He was meant to stop it. He was meant to look at you and say, 'That is not the Miss Whitmore I was promised,' and the settlement was to be paid then and there, in front of witnesses, so the story would hold. But he did not stop it. He let the preacher say the words. Clara, I swear before God, I did not know why." Clara stood very still in the middle of the drawing room of Blackthorne Hall. Her hand was still on the back of the chair. Her other hand had gone to her mouth. "He married me on purpose." "Girl." "He married me on purpose, Papa, knowing I was not Victoria. Knowing the settlement had already been agreed. He married me anyway." "I don't know why, child. I swear it." "Get out of this house." "Clara, get out of this house, Papa, tonight, and do not come back until I send for you. Clara, girl, please. Out." Henry Whitmore got up. He walked to the door like a man walking to his own hanging. He put his hand on the latch. He turned. "Clara, what are you going to do?" Clara Whitmore Blackthorne looked at her father. "I am going to find out," she said, "what my husband wanted from this wedding that was worth marrying a woman he'd never met." She did not move for a long time after the door closed. Then she walked to the desk. She picked up the two lists. She folded them once and once again, and she put them into the inner pocket of her dress against her ribs where she could feel them. She walked out of the drawing room. She walked down the long hall. She did not go to the west rooms. She went to the study. The door was shut. A line of lamplight showed underneath. Clara did not knock. She pushed the door open. Edward Blackthorne was at his desk. The unopened envelope of divorce papers was still in front of him, exactly where she had set it down that morning, exactly where he had left it when Hollis left. He did not look surprised to see her. He looked instead like a man who had been waiting. "Mrs. Blackthorne?" "Mr. Blackthorne." "You've come about the papers." "I've come about the Calverts." He did not move, but something in his face and the long, hard line of his mouth flinched. And Clara knew in that moment, standing in the doorway of her husband's study, with the two folded lists pressed against her ribs, that she had just set her foot on a road there would be no walking back from. "Shut the door, Mrs. Blackthorne." "Yes, sir." She shut the door, and she did not sit down. "Shut the door, Mrs. Blackthorne." "It's shut, sir." "Then sit." "I'll stand." "Mrs. Blackthorne." "I'll stand, Mr. Blackthorne, because if I sit down in this room tonight, I am not certain I will have the strength to stand up again, and I mean to walk out of here on my own feet." Edward looked at her a long moment. "Say what you came to say." "You invited Thomas Calvert to our wedding." "I did." "By name?" "By name." "With his wife?" "With his wife." "Who is my sister?" "Who is your sister?" Clara's hand went to the back of the chair behind her. She did not sit. She only held. "Then you knew." "I knew." "Before you ever stood at that altar?" 3 weeks before." 3 weeks. "A letter came from Boston, Mrs. Blackthorne, from a man I have known since I was 9 years old. Thomas Calvert is my cousin on my mother's side." Clara did not speak. "He wrote to tell me he had married a Miss Victoria Whitmore in a Presbyterian church off Beacon Street on the 14th of May. He wrote because he was afraid. He wrote because the girl had told him her family had already promised her to a Virginia planter, and he said he wanted my counsel as a gentleman." "And what counsel did you give him, Mr. Blackthorne?" "I told him to keep her. I told him I would handle her father." "Handle? Handle Mrs. Blackthorne? By marrying her sister?" Edward did not answer. "By marrying me." "Mrs. Blackthorne." "Say it, sir. You owe me the saying of it." "I did not know it would be you." "You knew it would be someone." A long pause. "I knew," Edward said, That your father would not have the courage to stand in front of 200 guests and tell them his elder daughter had run off. I knew he would send a substitute. I knew the substitute would be his only other unmarried female kin of marriageable age. And I knew Mrs. Blackthorne, that I would allow the ceremony to proceed. Why? So that the Whitmore name would owe the Blackthorne name a debt. A debt of what, sir? A debt of silence, Mrs. Blackthorne, and a debt of shame. Your father sold your sister to me for a sum of money that was never coming back. When Victoria ran, he kept that money. He spent it. He paid down a note at the Farmers' Bank in Richmond 3 weeks ago, a note I know about, because the man who holds it is another cousin of mine. Clara's knuckles on the chair back had gone white. He spent the bride price. To the penny. Before the wedding. Before the wedding. So there was no money left to give back. None. And you knew this. I knew this. Then the ceremony was not a settlement, sir. It was a trap. Yes. A trap for my father. Yes. With me inside it. Edward closed his eyes for the briefest moment. Yes. Clara did not move. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She said quite calm, I see Mr. Blackthorne. Mrs. Blackthorne. I see very well, sir. Clara. It was the first time he had used her given name. She looked up at him. You do not have the right, Mr. Blackthorne. No, ma'am, I don't. Then don't. No, ma'am. He stood up from the desk. He did not come around it. He only stood the way a man stands at a grave hat in his hands. You married me, Clara said, to punish my father. Yes, and then you told me at the altar that you would divorce me tomorrow. Because the minute the ink was dry on the marriage, my father was ruined. Because a divorce inside a day is a scandal no bride price in the Commonwealth can buy its way out of. Because he could never show his face in Virginia again. Yes, and I was the price of that. Yes, and what? Clara said, and her voice did not shake, but something in it had gone very thin and very cold. Did you think would happen to me, Mr. Blackthorne, after you had used me to ruin my father? Where exactly did you think a divorced bride of one day was to go? Edward Blackthorne did not answer. Did you think at all, sir? I did not. No, I did not reckon you had. She might have walked out then. She might have turned on her heel and walked out of that study and out of Blackthorne Hall and on to whatever road the night held, and she would have been within her rights. But she did not. She stood very still. She held the chair back, and she said, Mr. Blackthorne. Ma'am? Who else knew? Beg pardon? Who else in this scheme of yours, sir? Who else knew that Victoria had already married in Boston? Who else knew that my father had spent the bride price? Who else knew that you meant to stand at an altar and make a wife of whichever Whitmore woman walked through the door? Hollis. Your lawyer. My lawyer. Anyone else? No. Think, sir. No, Mrs. Blackthorne. Only Hollis. Then explain to me, Mr. Blackthorne, why, when I looked at the guest list this afternoon, your guest list in your own hand, there were 14 names on it of people who did not attend. Edward went still. What did you say? 14 names, sir. People you invited who did not come. And 6 people who were at my wedding whose names were nowhere on your list. That is not possible. I have the list in my pocket, sir. I have compared it against my own memory of every soul I shook hands with. 14 and 6, Mr. Blackthorne. Somebody has been in your papers. He crossed the room in 3 strides. He was at the door before she'd finished speaking. He threw it open and bellowed down the hall in a voice Clara had not yet heard him use. Harlan! Sir. Harlan, fetch Hollis. Now. Tonight. Send Caleb on the fast horse. Tell him if Hollis is in bed, he is to be pulled out of bed. Tell him if Hollis is at supper, he is to leave his plate. Tell him I want Hollis in this study before midnight, or he can find himself another client by morning. Yes, sir. Mrs. Harlan was already moving. Clara heard her boots going fast down the back stairs. Edward shut the door. He turned. Show me the list. Sir. Show me Mrs. Blackthorne, please. She took the folded papers from inside her dress. She laid them on the desk. She smoothed them flat with the side of her hand. He bent over them. His finger traveled down one column, down the other. He stopped halfway. Judge Marston was not there. No, sir. Colonel Pettigrew. Not there. The Reverend Samuel Hook of Williamsburg. Not there. My Uncle Josiah. Not there, sir. These are the men. He stopped. He straightened. He set both his palms flat on the desk. Mrs. Blackthorne. Yes, sir. These are the men I invited to witness a broken engagement. These are the men of standing in the Commonwealth. These are the men who, if they had come and seen your father's shame, would have carried the story to every parlor from here to Norfolk by Tuesday. And none of them came. None of them came. Then what they were sent, sir, was a letter telling them the wedding was canceled. Yes, by someone who did not want my plan to work. Yes, because if the judges and the colonels and the uncles did not come, then there was no shame. Then there was no ruin. Then my father walked into a quiet country wedding with no audience to mark him down. Edward's eyes came up to hers. Then the scheme was not mine anymore, Mrs. Blackthorne. No, sir. It was somebody else's. Yes, sir. Somebody who knew mine. Somebody who wanted me in that chapel. Somebody who wanted the marriage to happen and the ruin not to. Yes. He sat down slowly in his chair. Somebody wanted you to be my wife, Mrs. Blackthorne. Yes, sir. For real. For keeping. It appears so. Who? I do not know, sir. Your father. My father did not know who was or was not coming to this wedding. My father walked into that chapel expecting the judges. He was as surprised as anyone to find only farmers and their wives. You are certain, I left him crying on a sofa in the drawing room an hour ago, Mr. Blackthorne. The man who set this fire did not look like he'd lit a match. Then who? Mr. Blackthorne. Yes. You said only 2 souls knew your plan, you and Mr. Hollis. Edward Blackthorne looked at the door he had just shouted down the hall. He did not speak. Clara did not speak. The clock on the mantel ticked 11 times before either of them drew breath. Hollis, Edward said at last. Mr. Hollis, my lawyer? Your lawyer, who rode in this morning at dawn with a set of divorce papers already drawn up, who had them ready the night before, who knew to draw them before I ever told him to. Before you told him, before I told him, Mrs. Blackthorne, I spoke of divorce only once in my life in that chapel yesterday to you at the altar. And Hollis was at the altar. Yes, sir. He drew those papers in the hours between the altar and the dawn. Or before. Mr. Blackthorne? Ma'am? If your lawyer sent word to 14 of the most important men in Virginia that your wedding was canceled and then drew up papers to divorce you from the wife he had helped trap you with, then your lawyer does not work for you, sir. No, ma'am, he does not. For whom? Edward Blackthorne put his face in his hands for the first time since Clara had met him, and he sat like that for a long, slow moment. Mrs. Blackthorne. Sir, I have to ask you something. Ask it. My uncle Josiah Blackthorne, my father's younger brother. Do you know his name? I've heard of him. What have you heard? That he lives at a place called Oak Ridge, in the county next to this one. That he did not come to your father's funeral. That Mrs. Harlan will not speak his name inside this house. Yes, all of that is true. Go on, sir. If I had died unmarried, if I had died with no wife and no child, my uncle Josiah would inherit Blackthorne Hall, and every acre attached to it. Yes. If I had married and divorced within the week, and the divorce was public, and the scandal was great, and no other woman in Virginia would have me after I would have died, in all likelihood unmarried still, and my uncle would still inherit. Yes. But if I marry and I stay married and I have a child, then Oak Ridge is shut out forever. Forever. Mr. Blackthorne. Mrs. Blackthorne. Your uncle hired your lawyer. My uncle hired my lawyer. Your uncle used your own plan against you. Yes. He let you set the trap. He sent the letters canceling the guests. He drew the divorce papers. He meant for you to sign them in the morning before you thought. He meant for the scandal to be so public that no decent family in the Commonwealth would send you another daughter. He meant for me to be the last woman you ever stood beside at an altar. Yes, Mrs. Blackthorne, he did. So that he could have this house. So that he could have this house. Clara did not sit down. She stood very straight in the middle of the study, and she felt something happen in her chest that she did not have a name for. Mr. Blackthorne. Ma'am. I came into this room an hour ago believing you had used me to ruin my father. I believed I was a pawn you had picked up off a board and meant to throw away by morning. I was prepared to sign your papers and walk out of this house with nothing to my name but a ring I did not want. Yes, ma'am. I am no longer prepared to do that. Edward looked up. Ma'am, if I sign your papers tonight, Mr. Blackthorne, or tomorrow or next week, your uncle wins. Yes. If I walk out of this house, your uncle wins. Yes. If you divorce me, sir, for any cause in any court, your uncle wins. Yes. Then I will not be divorced, Mr. Blackthorne. Edward Blackthorne stared at her. Ma'am, I will not be divorced. I will not walk out. I will not go quiet to my father's house or any other house. I am the wife of Edward Blackthorne of Blackthorne Hall in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I will remain the wife of Edward Blackthorne until such time as the Lord sees fit to take one of us out of this world. Do you understand me, sir? Mrs. Blackthorne. Do you understand me? I understand you. Good. Ma'am. Yes. Why? Clara tilted her head. Beg pardon, sir. Why? Why would you stay? After what I have done. After what I have told you tonight. You owe me nothing. You owe this house nothing. Why? Clara was quiet a long moment. Because, she said at last, I have been bought and sold and moved about a board my whole life, Mr. Blackthorne. By my father. By my sister. By you. By your uncle now, it seems. And I have decided, sir, in the hour since I stood in this doorway, I have decided that the next move on the board will be mine. Edward Blackthorne did not speak. He only got to his feet slow like a man sore from a long ride. He came around the desk. He stopped 3 paces short of her. Mrs. Blackthorne. Sir? I owe you more apologies than I have hours left in my life to make. Yes, sir, you do. I will make them, everyone, in their time. For now, Mr. Blackthorne, you will do one thing. Name it. You will not let Mr. Hollis through the front door of this house. No, ma'am. When he comes tonight, he will be shown into the east parlor. He will be given a glass of brandy. He will be told you are unwell and have sent your wife to speak with him in your stead. My wife. Your wife. Mrs. Blackthorne. I have been listening to men talk around me for 22 years, Mr. Blackthorne. I believe I can manage a lawyer. He looked at her. He looked at her a long, long moment. Yes, ma'am. Good. There was a knock at the study door. Mrs. Harlan. Sir, ma'am, Mr. Hollis is here. Already. Yes, sir. He was at supper at the Pemberton place 4 miles out. Caleb met him on the road coming home. Is he in the house? In the front hall, sir. Edward looked at Clara. Clara looked at Edward. East parlor, Mrs. Harlan. Ma'am. Show Mr. Hollis into the east parlor. Brandy. My husband is unwell. Yes, ma'am. And Mrs. Harlan. Ma'am. Send for the pastor from the chapel where I was married yesterday, and send for 2 men whose names I will write down for you now, men of standing in this county, whom my husband trusts. I want 3 witnesses in this house within the hour. Yes, ma'am. Go. Mrs. Harlan went. Clara walked to Edward's desk. She picked up his pen. She dipped it in his ink. She wrote 2 names on a slip of paper in a hand that did not shake. She folded the paper. She handed it to her husband. These 2 Mr. Blackthorne, can they be trusted? He read the names. With my life. Good. Then let us find out, sir, what your lawyer is willing to say to a woman he believes to be a frightened bride, when a frightened bride is the very last thing she is." Edward Blackthorne looked at his wife, and for the first time in all the hours since he had put a ring on her finger, for the first time since he had whispered cruelty in her ear at an altar, he did something he had not done. He smiled. It was small. It was tired. It was not yet a kind smile, but it was the beginning of one. "Mrs. Blackthorne, Mr. Blackthorne, lead the way." And Clara Whitmore Blackthorne, bride of one day, mistress of Blackthorne Hall by her own choosing, walked out of her husband's study toward the east parlor, with her husband a half step behind her for the first time since their vows, and the whole of Virginia, had it been watching, would not have known her for the same woman who had walked down that aisle the morning before. Mr. Hollis rose from the settee the moment Clara walked in. "Mrs. Blackthorne?" "Mr. Hollis, sit down, please." "I was told, Mr. Blackthorne, my husband is unwell. The excitement of the day, I expect. He has asked me to speak with you on his behalf." The lawyer hesitated. His eyes flickered past Clara toward the hall. Edward was not there. Edward was at that moment leaning against the wall just outside the parlor door, listening. "Mrs. Blackthorne, forgive me, but matters of this nature, Mr. Hollis, concern me rather particularly, seeing as I am the subject of them. Sit down." He sat. Clara did not. She walked to the small table where the brandy had been set. She poured 2 glasses. She carried one to him. "Thank you, ma'am." "You're welcome, Mr. Hollis. A long ride out from the Pemberton supper." "It was no trouble." "It must have been. Mrs. Pemberton sets a good table by all accounts." "She does, ma'am." "And yet you left your plate." "Mr. Blackthorne's business comes first, ma'am." "Does it?" "Always." "Always." "Yes, ma'am." Clara sat at last in the chair opposite him and set her own glass down untouched. "Mr. Hollis?" "Ma'am." "I have been reading the papers you drew up last night." "Yes, ma'am." "They are very thorough. I take pride in my work. Do you also take pride in how quickly you produced them?" "Ma'am, my husband spoke the word divorce once, Mr. Hollis, in a chapel, at an altar, before God and 200 witnesses, and by 7 this morning you had ridden out here with 10 pages of ironclad separation ready for my signature. I work late, ma'am." "You must." "I do, ma'am." "Mr. Hollis?" "Yes, ma'am." "When did you first draw up those papers?" A pause. Half a breath too long. "Last night, ma'am. After the ceremony." "Are you certain?" "Quite certain. The pages I saw this morning were on a heavier paper than Mr. Blackthorne keeps in this house. A paper with a maker's mark from a stationer in Petersburg. That's a full day's ride, Mr. Hollis." I keep my own stock, ma'am." "You keep a stock of divorce paper, Mr. Hollis." "I keep a stock of all manner of paper. It is my profession." "Ah." Clara lifted her glass. She did not drink from it. She only turned it in her fingers. "Mr. Hollis, a question of another sort, if I may." "Ma'am, did you write to Judge Marston 3 weeks ago?" The lawyer went very still. "Judge Marston, ma'am?" "Of Richmond." I may have written him about a matter of deed, a boundary question. I handle several of Mr. Blackthorne's—" "Mr. Hollis." "Yes." The judge received a letter on stationery bearing the Blackthorne seal. It informed him that the wedding of Edward Blackthorne had been postponed indefinitely on account of illness in the Whitmore family. It was signed in what the judge believed to be my husband's hand. He did not come to the ceremony yesterday on the strength of that letter. Silence. "Did you write that letter, Mr. Hollis?" Mr. Hollis. "Ma'am, I do not know what you are—" Colonel Pettigrew received a like letter. The Reverend Hook of Williamsburg. Mr. Josiah Blackthorne's own neighbor, Mr. Kettering of Oak Ridge, though curiously Mr. Josiah himself, received no such letter at all. Mr. Hollis had gone the color of cold ash. "Mrs. Blackthorne, you are mistaken." "Am I?" "You are a young woman much distressed. The events of yesterday." "Mr. Hollis?" "Ma'am, I have in this house tonight 3 witnesses, the pastor who married me, 2 gentlemen of my husband's acquaintance. They are in the drawing room across the hall drinking coffee, and they are going to hear every word you say next. Ma'am. And my husband, who is not in fact unwell, is standing on the other side of that door. Mr. Hollis turned his head. The parlor door opened. Edward Blackthorne walked in. The lawyer did not rise. He could not. His knees had gone out from under him in the way a man's knees sometimes do when the floor beneath him is suddenly revealed to be a trapdoor. Sir, sit Hollis. Sir, You don't what? I don't understand what your wife is saying to me. My wife, Edward said, and there was a strange quiet weight on the word, is saying what I have been too proud and too slow to say myself. Which is that you have betrayed me, Hollis, and that the master you serve sleeps 4 miles east of here at Oak Ridge. The silence that followed was the longest Clara had ever lived through. Mr. Blackthorne. Hollis. Sir, I beg you. On your knees or on your feet, sir, the truth is coming out of you tonight. Choose. Mr. Hollis chose his feet. He stood. He was a small man, and he looked smaller now than he had an hour before. Your uncle came to me, he said, 4 months ago. Go on. He told me that you meant to marry, that the bride price had been paid, that the Whitmore girl had run. He knew it all, sir. I don't know how he knew it, but he knew it before I did. Someone in the Whitmore household wrote to him, Clara said quietly. Yes, ma'am. I believe that is so. Who? A maid, ma'am. A girl who went from the Whitmore place to Oak Ridge 2 months ago with good wages and a recommendation she did not earn. Clara's jaw set. Go on. He your uncle? He said that he meant to have Blackthorne Hall, that it should have been his father's and then his, that your grandfather had cheated him by leaving it all to the elder line. He said if you were to marry and have a child, the hall was lost to him forever. But if you were to marry and divorce in a great public scandal, no respectable woman in Virginia would take you after, and a man without a wife is a man without an heir. And the money. Your uncle promised me, sir, he promised me $6,000 and the title to the south parcel of Oak Ridge. $6,000. Yes, sir. And the price for that $6,000 was to be my marriage. Yes, sir. And my name. Yes, sir. And the ruin of the woman who stands beside me. Mr. Hollis could not answer. Mr. Hollis. It was Clara. Her voice was very quiet. Ma'am, did my uncle by marriage give any instruction at all, as to what was to become of me after the divorce? Mr. Hollis shut his eyes. Mr. Hollis. He said, ma'am, he said it would be no great matter. No great matter. He said you were a younger daughter of a ruined house. He said you had nowhere to go and nobody to go to. He said the shame of it would be taken care of on its own. Clara did not move. She did not speak. Edward did. Taken care of. Sir. How, Hollis? Sir, I swear to God I did not ask how. I don't know, sir. I don't know. I swear on my mother, I did not ask. He said it as a man says a thing that has already been decided. Clara took 1 step toward the lawyer. Mr. Hollis? Ma'am. Are you telling me, sir, that the man who owns the house 4 miles east of here had made provision for my disappearance? Ma'am, I don't. Are you telling me he had already decided I was not to be permitted to live and tell what had been done to me? Ma'am, I don't. Answer me, Mr. Hollis. I believe he had, ma'am. The glass in Clara's hand did not tremble, but the brandy inside it moved very slightly. She set it down. Edward was at her side in 1 step. Mrs. Blackthorne. I am all right, sir. Mrs. Blackthorne, sit. I will not sit, Mr. Blackthorne. Clara. I said I will not sit. She did not sit. She turned instead to the door. Mrs. Harlan? The housekeeper was already there, silent as an old cat. Ma'am? Bring in the 3 gentlemen from the drawing room, please. Yes, ma'am. The pastor came in first. The Reverend Elias Combs, who had stood at the altar of the Blackthorne Chapel the morning before and spoken the words that had made Clara a wife, was a long gray man of 60, with hands like old gloves and eyes that did not miss much. Behind him came two others. The first was Mr. Amos Coulter, a planter from 3 counties up the river, who had been Edward's father's closest friend, and was now in the way of these things Edward's as well. The second was Sheriff Jacob Reed of the county, a man with a silver star on his vest and a colt at his hip that he had not yet drawn in 7 years of office, but which he kept, as he said, in good oil all the same. "Reverend, Mr. Coulter, Sheriff." "Mrs. Blackthorne, thank you for coming at such an hour." "Ma'am, when a bride of a day sends for a pastor at 10 at night, a man comes." "Yes, Reverend, I imagine he does." She turned to Mr. Hollis. "Mr. Hollis, say it again, please, for these gentlemen, what you have just told my husband." The lawyer did not want to. "Mr. Hollis." Edward's voice, very level, very cold. "Either you speak, sir, or the sheriff here takes you out of my house in irons, and the matter is decided in a court tomorrow. Your choice." Mr. Hollis spoke. He spoke for a full 20 minutes. The sheriff took notes in a small leather book. The Reverend did not write because the Reverend was a man whose memory was his profession, and he wanted no piece of paper between what he heard and what he would someday be called to repeat. Mr. Coulter stood by the mantel with his arms folded and his mouth a hard line, and he did not interrupt once. When Mr. Hollis was done, there was a long silence. "Sheriff Reed?" "Ma'am, is what this man has said enough?" "Enough for what, ma'am?" "Enough to put my husband's uncle in a cell." The sheriff considered. "The hiring of a lawyer to deceive is a thin charge, ma'am. Lawyers deceive every day, and the law does not touch them. The letters sent to the judge and the colonel and the Reverend Hook, those might be forgery, depending on the signatures. The conspiracy against your person, ma'am, that is a graver matter. But Mr. Hollis here only says he believed such a thing was intended. He does not swear he was told so in so many words." "I see. However, ma'am." "Yes, Sheriff. A man does not ride to Oak Ridge tonight without warning that house, and a house warned tonight will empty by morning. My advice, ma'am, is that somebody rides to Oak Ridge before dawn." "Yes." "With witnesses." "Yes." "And with a document signed by Mr. Hollis here in the presence of all of us, setting down everything he has said in this room tonight. So that if the man at Oak Ridge flees, the paper remains, and if he stays, the paper is the rope." Clara turned to her husband. "Mr. Blackthorne." "Ma'am." "I believe your lawyer has one more piece of work to do tonight." "I believe he does, Mrs. Blackthorne." Edward walked to his study and came back with a sheaf of clean paper, a fresh pen, and the inkwell. He set them in front of Mr. Hollis on the little parlor table. "Right, sir?" "Mr. Blackthorne, write every word you have just said. In your own hand. Sign it. Date it. I will sign as witness. My wife will sign as witness. The Reverend Mr. Coulter and the sheriff will sign as witnesses. And when the sun comes up in this house, you will ride with the sheriff to Oak Ridge, and you will stand in my uncle's parlor, and you will say it all again to his face, because I'll not have him hear it first from any mouth but yours." Mr. Hollis began to weep. "Mr. Blackthorne, sir, please, the man will kill me. Then you'll have the sheriff beside you, and me, and Mr. Coulter, and if the good Lord wills it, the Reverend, who has seen more deathbeds than any of us, and whose word carries weight even with a man like Josiah Blackthorne." "Sir, write Hollis." Mr. Hollis wrote. He wrote for 2 hours. His hand shook. Twice he stopped and wiped his face on his sleeve and went on. When he was done, Edward read every page. Then the sheriff. Then Clara. Clara asked for the pen. She sat down at the little parlor table, the table where she had poured the brandy an hour before, and she wrote beneath Mr. Hollis's signature in a strong, clear hand, "Witnessed this night, the 17th of July, in the year of our Lord, 1818, in the parlor of Blackthorne Hall, by the undersigned, who do all of us affirm that the said Mr. Hollis spoke these things freely, and in his right mind, and without threat of violence upon his person." She signed her name, Clara Whitmore Blackthorne, the first time she had written it. Tug. It was near 2 in the morning when the witnesses went home. The sheriff took Mr. Hollis with him to sleep under lock and key at the jailhouse in town, because no man trusted him enough to let him bed down anywhere a horse could be saddled. The Reverend went home to his chapel. Mr. Coulter went to the guest room because he would ride at dawn. Edward and Clara stood alone at the front door of Blackthorne Hall. "Mrs. Blackthorne." "Mr. Blackthorne." "You have not slept in 30 hours." "No, sir." "Neither have I."
"I know, sir." He did not open the door. He did not show her up. He only stood with one hand on the frame, and he looked at her as if he were seeing her for the first time. "Clara." "Edward." It was the first time she had said his name. He did not smile. He did not reach for her. He only said very quiet, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what, sir?"
"This morning, in the study, when you came in with the coffee. You had already worked out some of it, hadn't you? You knew the guest list was wrong. You had been in your sister's shoes a day, and you already had more of the truth of this mess than I did after 3 weeks." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me, Clara?" She looked at him. "Because no one asked Edward." He was quiet a long time. "I am asking," he said at last. "I am asking now. I see that you are. Will you tell me?" "I've been telling you, sir, all evening." "Not all of it." "No, sir, not all of it." "Will you?" "In time." "In time." "Yes, sir, in time." He bowed his head. "Mrs. Blackthorne." "Sir." "I said at the altar that I would divorce you tomorrow." "Yes, sir." "I was wrong." "Yes, sir." "I was wrong about many things. I was wrong about your father. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about the sort of trap I had set, and the sort of woman who had walked into it. I was wrong, Clara, to whisper cruelty into the ear of a bride at her own wedding. I was wrong to let that cruelty stand at the breakfast. I was wrong to send Hollis with papers before dawn. I was wrong in every way a man in my position can be wrong." "Yes, sir." "And I am sorry." Clara looked at him. She did not answer at once. "Mr. Blackthorne." "Yes." "Your apology is accepted." "Thank you." "Conditionally." "Ma'am?" "Tomorrow today, I should say, for it is past midnight, you will ride to Oak Ridge with the sheriff and Mr. Coulter and your lawyer. You will face your uncle in his own parlor. You will not flinch, and you will not soften, and you will not offer him terms. Do you understand me?" "I understand you. When it is done, when that man is in a cell, or on a boat, or in the ground by his own hand, whichever way the day falls, you will come home to this house." "Yes." "And you will not say another word to me of divorce. Not tomorrow, not next week, not ever." "No, ma'am, not ever." "Good." "Clara." "Yes." "What then?" She looked up at him. Her eyes were tired. They were steady. "Then, Mr. Blackthorne, we will see what sort of marriage two people can make when they begin it at the bottom and build it up by their own hands, which I reckon is more than most folks get." Edward Blackthorne lifted her hand, the hand that wore his ring, and he did not kiss it because he had not yet earned that. He only held it. Once. Briefly. Then he let it go. "Good night, Mrs. Blackthorne." "Good night, Mr. Blackthorne." She walked up the stairs to the mistress's chamber. Not the west room this time, but the proper one, the one with the good window, and she did not look back. And downstairs in the front hall of Blackthorne Hall, Edward Blackthorne stood for a long while with his hand still warm from the touch of his wife's, and he did not move until the first gray of morning showed in the east. The men rode out of Blackthorne Hall at first light. Edward went on his bay mare. The sheriff took Mr. Hollis up behind him on a stout county horse whose reins the lawyer was not permitted to hold. Mr. Coulter rode his own gelding, and the reverend, who had come back at dawn without being sent for, rode a quiet gray mule, because, as he said, a man of God does not need to arrive fast, but he needs to arrive sure. Clara stood at the upstairs window and watched them go. Mrs. Harlan was at her elbow. "Ma'am." "Yes." "You're trembling." "I am not Mrs. Harlan." "Yes, ma'am, you are." Clara looked at her hand on the sill. It was shaking very slightly. "Well," she said, "I reckon I am." "It ain't weakness, ma'am." "No." "No, ma'am. It's a body that's been holding itself up for 2 days, telling you it would like at some point to sit down." Clara almost laughed. "Mrs. Harlan." "Yes, ma'am. Make me a pot of very strong tea, and then you will sit with me in the drawing room until my husband comes home, because I do not believe I can sit alone in a house this big today." "Yes, ma'am." They came back at noon. 4 riders went out. 5 came back. Clara was at the front steps before the first hoof touched the drive. "Mr. Blackthorne." "Mrs. Blackthorne. You are whole." "I am whole. All of you. All of us. And the 5th." Edward swung down from his horse. He did not come up the steps. He stood at the foot of them, and he lifted his hat to his wife the way a man lifts his hat to a lady at a church door. The 5th rider. "Mrs. Blackthorne is my Uncle Josiah Blackthorne. He rides with his hands tied in front of him to the pommel of his saddle. He rides under the charge of conspiracy to defraud, conspiracy to defame, and conspiracy to procure the disappearance of a lawful wife. The sheriff will take him to the county jail within the hour." "He came with you." "He did not have a choice." "Did he fight?" "He tried." "Did anyone?" "No, ma'am. No blood was let on either side. Mr. Coulter is a large man, and my uncle is 62 years old. It was a short disagreement." "I see." "Mrs. Blackthorne?" "Yes." "He asked to speak to you." Clara did not answer at once. "He asked for me, did he?" "Yes, ma'am." "He said my name." He said he would like to offer the lady of the house his apology, before he is taken away." "Would he now?" "Ma'am, you do not have to—" "I will speak to him, Mr. Blackthorne." Clara. In the drawing room, in the presence of the sheriff yourself, Mr. Coulter, and the Reverend, no others. "Yes, ma'am." Josiah Blackthorne was a tall, dry man with a long face and eyes the color of old iron. He sat in the chair the sheriff pointed him to, and he placed his tied hands on his knees, and he looked at Clara as a man looks at a horse he has heard about, but has not yet assessed for himself. "Mrs. Blackthorne." "Mr. Blackthorne, I understand I owe you an apology." "You do not, sir." "Beg pardon. You do not owe me an apology, Mr. Blackthorne. An apology is a thing given between equals. You and I are not equals. You are a man in tied hands who will sleep in a cell tonight, and I am the mistress of the house you meant to take from my husband. We have no business of apology between us." The old man's mouth tightened. "Then what, madam, did your husband bring me here for?" "He brought you here because you asked, sir. I granted it as a courtesy, not because I owed you one." "I see. Do you?" "Mrs. Blackthorne." "Yes." "I should like to ask you a question." "Ask." "Why are you still in this house?" Clara's head tilted a quarter inch. "Sir, my nephew humiliated you in front of 200 people. He whispered in your ear that he would divorce you by morning. He sent his lawyer to draw up the papers before the sun was up. A woman of spirit would have signed those papers and gone home before breakfast. A woman of pride would have been in her father's house tonight weeping and letting the world weep with her. Instead, madam, you are here in this drawing room, giving me sentences I had not expected to hear from a girl of 22 years. Why?" Clara did not answer at once. She looked at the man who had hired a lawyer to destroy her, who had, by Mr. Hollis's own admission, made provision for her disappearance, who sat now with his hands tied and still thought he had the right to question her. And she understood in that moment that this man did not know her at all, that he had planned her ruin without ever once imagining she had a mind. "Mr. Blackthorne." "Madam, I will tell you why, since you have asked. No one has asked me much these last 3 days, and I find when a question comes, I am of a mind to answer it. Please, I am still in this house, sir, because I took a vow, in a chapel, before God and a pastor and 200 people, most of whom did not know my name, and some of whom did not care to. I said the words. My husband said the words. The ring went on the finger. The paper was signed. And in that chapel, sir, whether he meant his vows or whether he did not, whether I came to the altar for love or for duty
or for my father's debts in that chapel, I became Mrs. Edward Blackthorne. So you are pious. I am not pious, Mr. Blackthorne. I am stubborn. Those are different things, though they sometimes rhyme. Madam. I am not finished, sir. He closed his mouth. I stayed in this house because the morning after my wedding, I was presented with a choice. I could leave, and a man who had never met me would have won. Or I could stay and learn what sort of woman I was capable of being when every door behind me had closed. And what sort of woman did you learn you were? The sort who does not run, sir. I see. Do you? I begin to. Good, because there is one more thing I want you to hear before the sheriff takes you out of this room. Say it, madam. You made provision, Mr. Blackthorne, through Mr. Hollis, who has sworn it in writing, and before witnesses for my disappearance. When this scheme of yours had run its course, and I had been used up and cast aside by your nephew, you did not mean for me to go quietly home. You meant for me to vanish. The old man did not speak. Mr. Blackthorne. Madam? Say it. Madam, I will not. Say it, sir. Say what you meant to do to me. Say it in front of the sheriff and the reverend and my husband. Say it out loud for the record and for my peace of mind. A long silence. I had arranged. Josiah Blackthorne said at last in a voice gone suddenly small, for a man to meet you on the road between this house and your father's, on the day of your departure, to see that you came to an accident from which no body would be recovered. Edward made a sound in his throat that was not a word. Clara did not look at him. She only kept her eyes on the old man. Thank you, Mr. Blackthorne. Madam, thank you for saying it plainly. I will remember that you said it. And when my children ask me someday why their great-uncle lives out his days in a prison in Richmond, I will tell them that he said it himself in his own voice in the drawing-room of Blackthorne Hall on the afternoon he was arrested. Madam, Sheriff. Ma'am. Take him out of my house. Yes, ma'am. The sheriff helped Josiah Blackthorne to his feet. The old man did not resist. He did not look at his nephew. He did not look at Clara again. He was led out of the drawing-room and down the hall and out of the front door of Blackthorne Hall, and he did not set foot in that house again for the rest of his living days. When the door closed behind them, Clara sat down for the first time in 10 hours. She did not cry. She did not sway. She only sat in the nearest chair, and she put both her hands flat on her knees, and she breathed out slow. Clara. Edward. You were. Do not say magnificent. Do not say brave. Do not say any of the words men use when they mean they have just watched a woman do a thing they did not know a woman could do. I am tired, sir. I would like my tea. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Harlan will bring it. Yes. Edward sat down across from her. He did not speak for a long time. Then he said, There is something I have to tell you, that I should have told you last night. Say it then. Your sister. Clara went still. What of her? Thomas Calvert wrote to me again. A second letter. It came 3 days ago, and in the business of the wedding and the trap, I did not open it until this morning, before we rode out. Edward. She is ill, Clara. Ill how? Childbed fever. She was brought to bed of a daughter 2 weeks ago, and the fever took her the day after. Thomas writes that the doctors do not expect her to live out the month. Clara's hands had gone tight on her knees. A daughter. A daughter. Named Catherine for your mother. Catherine. Yes. Is he a good man, Edward? I have known him 30 years. He is the best man I know but for one, and that one is not me. Who then? My father, who is 20 years dead. Clara let out a breath that had half a laugh in it and half something else. Edward. Yes. I have to go to Boston. I know. I have to go now. Today. Tomorrow at the latest. I have to see her before. I know Clara. And the child? I know. If she does not, if the fever takes her, Edward, the child, Clara. Yes. We will bring the child home. Clara looked at him. We.
We. You and I. If it is her wish. If it is Thomas's wish. There is room in this house for a child. There has been room in this house for a child for 30 years, and none to fill it. We will bring her home, and we will raise her as our own, and she will have a place in the world that no uncle, and no lawyer, and no dead vow will ever take from her. Edward. I am asking you, Clara. I am asking. Clara lifted her hand to her mouth, and for the first time in the 3 days since she had come down the stairs in her sister's wedding gown, for the first time since her father had told her at midnight that she was to stand at an altar in another woman's place, Clara Whitmore Blackthorne wept. Not hard, not loud. Just 2 clean tears, one after the other, down a face that had not permitted itself that luxury before. Yes, she said. Yes, Edward. We will bring her home. They left for Boston 3 days later. Clara went with Mr. Coulter's wife as her companion and Mrs. Harlan, who had refused with a firmness that brooked no argument to let the mistress of Blackthorne Hall ride 800 miles without her housekeeper. Edward rode with them the first 4 days, as far as Baltimore, where business of the estate called him back. He did not want to turn. Clara made him. You have a county to hold together, Mr. Blackthorne. A trial to prepare. A lawyer to replace. I will not have Blackthorne Hall fall apart while its master rides north to hold his wife's hand. Clara, go home. I will send word when we reach Boston. You will write every day. I will write when there is something to say. Every day, Clara. Every other day. Clara. Every day, Mr. Blackthorne. Thank you. He kissed her hand on the step of the Stagecoach Inn at Baltimore. It was a small kiss and a proper one, and it was witnessed by 6 travelers and a kitchen boy who told his mother about it for a month afterward. But Clara felt it all the way to Boston. Victoria Calvert, who had been Victoria Whitmore, died on a Tuesday in the first week of August, holding her sister's hand. She had been lucid for 3 days before the end. She had wept. She had begged Clara's forgiveness for the thing she had done. Clara had given it freely, and more than once, and Victoria had died believing it. Clara, I'm here. The baby. I have her. She is in my arms. You will. I will. I swear it, Vicky. On our mother's grave, I will raise her as my own. And Thomas will always be her father, always Vicky. He will come to Virginia when he can. She will know him. She will know you. Every day of her life she will know who her mother was. Clara. Yes. I was so afraid of him. Of Thomas. Of the Duke. I know Vicky. I thought he would be cruel. Clara looked down at her sister. The fever had thinned her to a shadow of the bright, sharp girl who had ridden out in the middle of the night 2 months back. He is not cruel, Vicky. No, he was proud, and he was angry, and he was wrong about a great many things, but he is not cruel, not at his bones. You love him. Clara did not answer at once. I do not know yet, Vicky, but I think I will. Victoria smiled. It was the last thing she did in this world. Clara came home to Blackthorne Hall in September with a 6-week-old baby in her arms. Edward was on the front steps before the carriage stopped. Clara. Edward. He did not go to her first. He went to the baby. He bent his head over the little wrapped bundle in her arms, and he looked at Catherine Calvert, who was now and always would be Catherine Blackthorne. And something moved in his face that Clara had not seen there before. She has your sister's mouth. She has my mother's chin. Clara. Yes. Welcome home. Yes. Come inside. Yes. She went inside. She carried the baby up the stairs, not to the West Rooms, never again the West Rooms, but to the nursery that had been shut up for 30 years, and that Mrs. Harlan, without being asked, had scrubbed and aired and papered fresh in the weeks Clara had been away. The cradle that had held Edward and his father and his grandfather before him was in the middle of the room. It had a quilt on it that was older than the house,
Clara laid Catherine in that cradle.
Edward stood beside her. Mrs. Blackthorne. Mr. Blackthorne. I said at the altar I would divorce you by morning. I remember. It has been 2 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days since that morning. I did not know you had counted. I have counted Clara. Edward. Yes. I am not going anywhere. I know. Neither are you. I know that too. Then I reckon we had best begin, Mr. Blackthorne, the business of being married, properly, from the first day, as if we had never been strangers, and as if no cruel word had ever been spoken at any altar. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And Edward Blackthorne, master of Blackthorne Hall, Duke of the James River, a man who had whispered a cruelty into a bride's ear in front of 200 souls, and had spent every day since learning what that cruelty had cost. Edward Blackthorne took his wife's hand above their daughter's cradle, and this time he did kiss it, and this time he had earned the right. The trial of Josiah Blackthorne took 7 days. He was sentenced to 18 years in the state prison at Richmond, where he died of a chest fever in his 11th year of confinement. Mr. Hollis, who turned state's evidence, was disbarred from the practice of law in the Commonwealth of Virginia for life, and went west and was never heard of again by any person in this story. Henry Whitmore sold what was left of the Whitmore estate to pay his debts, and lived out his days as a boarder in the home of a second cousin in Norfolk. Clara wrote to him twice a year. He answered once. That was enough for them both. Thomas Calvert remarried in 1822 to a widow of good sense and better laughter, and remained Catherine's father in every way that the laws of love and letters permit. He came to Virginia every summer until the year he died, and Catherine went to Boston every Christmas, and between them they made a family that crossed 800 miles and 2 states and never once missed a birthday. Mrs. Harlan lived to see Catherine married in 1839 in the chapel at Blackthorne Hall to a quiet man from Charlottesville with kind eyes and a good farm. Mrs. Dutton lived to bake the cake. Both women cried through the ceremony. So did the groom's mother. So did half the county. Clara and Edward Blackthorne had 4 more children after Catherine, 2 boys and 2 girls, and each of them was born in the mistress's chamber of Blackthorne Hall, in the good bed with the window that looked out over the front drive, which Clara had claimed on the second night of her marriage, and never once surrendered. Edward never again spoke the word divorce in his wife's hearing. Not in anger, not in jest, not in any season of their long life together. He had said it once at an altar before God and 200 people, and he had spent the rest of his days unsaying it, one kindness at a time, until the word had no weight left at all. Clara lived to be 79 years old. She outlived her husband by 11 years. She sat in the chair by the good window and watched her grandchildren play in the drive, where her husband's horse had once turned to carry him away from her at the altar, and she was not sorry in the end for any part of the road that had brought her there. Because a woman who has been sold for a price and a woman who has been chosen for love are not the same woman. And Clara Whitmore Blackthorne, bride of one day and wife of 57 years, knew the difference in her bones. She had been sold once. She had never been sold again. And that in the end was the whole story.